So sorry. I don't know why. My camera's very, very blurry. I can't figure out what's going on. We are dedicating tonight's class to Rabbi Zachariah Wallerstein. And I would like to put Shira on the spot for a second. I did not tell her this in advance, but I know that Shira was very, very close. So I would like to ask Shira, who I did not ask in advance. She's probably not very happy with me at the moment, but if she could just say a few words from her memories, from her experiences, and then we'll start the class.
Oh my gosh, Mrs. Turin, that was so not nice.
I said you're not going to be very happy. I know.
Okay. Oh gosh. I don't know what to say. He basically spent his entire life everybody else. And he looked at every Jew as just potential and looked at them as neshama and nothing more than just that. And he never looked at like the outside, and he never said no. And whatever somebody needed, whether he can get it, whether he had the means to give it to them or not, he would find it. He somehow knew how to help everybody. And yeah, it's hard. It's hard to believe that the world can actually continue without him.
Wow. From your personal experiences, like what struck you the most?
I think accepting everybody, because being in 3 high schools and being told that I wasn't good enough, then hearing a rabbi also who had a similar experience, and how far he's gone and how much he's been able to impact the world, just connected with him right away.
No judgment, absolute acceptance. That's what you took from it. That's what you took. That's what the world needs, right? That's what we need. That's it. That's it. Embracing every soul. Someone else, anybody else on the class now that had their personal experiences or memories or something they would like to share? Le'iloi nishmas. The idea of sharing, by the way, in case you're wondering why I put Shira on the spot, is because I should have asked her in advance, but okay. We're told that when someone passes away, it says v'hachai yitain elibo, which means the living take to heart, which means on a simple, basic, foundational level, that someone passed away. Life is shorter than I realized. Appreciate the value of life. Treasure it. Don't waste it. Use it, because it's short, because it ends. So that's sort of the overarching, the living take to heart. That's true every single time anyone passes away. Different ages, different stages hits us more deeply, but every time it's sort of a reminder of our own mortality and of the injunction to appreciate life and make it count. Additionally, the chayit and alibo, and the living take to heart, means that we look at the person that passed away and we look at their beauty. Because when someone passes away, what's shining, what's so clear to us, and I've experienced this personally, I'm sure many of you have, that when someone passes away and you're like, oh my gosh, they're so special. And then you're like, well, that's so weird. I knew them. I was friends with them. I was related to them. I lived with them. But when they pass away, suddenly what's so dominant is all of that beauty, and everything else just sort of falls away. And Chayit and Libo, we want to look at that beauty. We want to appreciate it. And we want to walk away with a little bit of it inside our own heart. Because when that happens, the living allow this deceased to live on. So just taking what Shira said, the idea of that completely no judgments, complete acceptance, which in our perspective would mean, how do we translate that to ourselves? We're not about to run a school for, the situations he did. How does that translate in my life? It might translate very similarly to love and acceptance for people that are not so nice to me, for people that have hurt me, for people that are mean to me, for people that are not respecting my needs. That could be our application of unconditional acceptance, unconditional love. And when we do something like that, the departed lives on through our continuing their beauty in this world. So thank you, Shira, for on the spot sharing. Anyone else have something they would like to share? Le'iloi nishmaso? Okay, so we will take it with that. And again, even if you didn't share, but if in your heart you're thinking of something, or you've heard something, or something touched you about them, something inspired you, and you say, I would like to be a bit more like that. I would like to take that quality and apply it to my life. And again, wait, how do I apply it to my life? So I'm saying just like this. Unconditional acceptance of people that have been rejected by others in our society could translate in your life to acceptance of people that are not so nice to you, that are rude to you, that don't treat you very nicely, but you could still accept them. You can still be gracious to them. You could still extend to them love like he did. So similarly, in any other things you've heard or things that touched you or things you knew, you could think, okay, so how do I translate that to my vernacular? How do I translate that to my reality? And then he lives on through my actions. So what we are discussing tonight, which definitely would be along these lines, because we're really talking about how do we improve ourselves and everything we do tonight and the gain from it and the growth that comes from it and the way we apply it, of course, is going to be helping us. It's going to be helping our relationships. It's going to be helping people in the world. And it also should be Leila Nishmaso in this week. Of course, it's very significant for his Neshama's journey. So what we were discussing last week, and we're continuing this week, is the idea of how do we maximize the Sfiras HaOmer experience. And we explained that the Jewish calendar, it happens, as actually we learned this from Megillah Esther, which wasn't so long ago, or maybe everything pre-Pesach was a long, long time ago. But in the Megillah Esther, it says, which means, as we remember the energy of these days, they are happening. We relive them. So just like we experience personal exodus on Pesach, and we take in joy on Sukkot, and we get the Torah on Shavuos, in these 49 days of the Omer, we can grow. And from where the Jews were to where they achieved, each one of us has the ability to grow and to grow in our own personal journeys in the ways we want to change. And generally it's viewed as, it's not usually as like, well, I want to daven better, or I want to say more Tehillim or learn Torah more. Usually the growth is viewed in terms of our own personal character. So we discussed last week 4 points, and today we want to do another 4 to have a total of 8 tips in your toolbox that you could choose to work on. You could take 1 of the 8, you could take 8 of the 8, but this is the time to do it. And this does not mean you can't work on your character traits in August. You can, and of course, go for it. But now is really an auspicious time. So it makes it like more doable. So just a brief reminder of the 4 we did, and then discussing the 4 we'd like to talk about tonight. So we said that one way of helping ourselves overcome our annoyance, impatience, frustration, judgments, anger, and maybe this was how Rabbi Wallerstein did it, is looking at a Jew and recognizing this is a piece of God. And again, sometimes like, well, I can really look at a Jew who's like, you know, far from me and suffering and maybe not the healthiest state and say, this is a piece of God. But when that Jew lives under my roof, sometimes it's a little harder, but it's the exact same perspective. Every single Jew is God's essence. And when I look at the person that way, maybe I'm going to shift how I respond to them. And also I want to remember that I'm a piece of God's essence. I'm also a piece of God's essence. And as such, I can handle this. My shoulders are very, very big. I'm very, very, very strong. And again, I don't know if that was the technique he was using to achieve what Shira said, but it's very, very possible that that was part of his thoughts. We spoke also about recognizing how addictive these negative behaviors are, and really being aware of the patterns of addiction that we go through when we get into our spaces of anger or any of those times when we allow ourselves to lose it. The third point we spoke about was recognizing how harmful stress is to yourself, because a lot of these negative traits create high stress, and the victim of stress is me. And sometimes you're thinking, well, why should I do this for this other person? Why should I work on myself so hard? Why am I always the one working on myself? And you could say, because I love myself and because I don't want to live such a stressful life, such a high intensity life of inner stress, of inner anger, of inner pain, because it's very wearing on my psyche. It's very harmful to me. And then we spoke about changing the environment. If you can change the environment to remove the triggers, that's a very strong, healthy gift you give yourself. Sort of like we all worked very hard over Pesach. Well, maybe nobody applauded and maybe nobody gifted us, but maybe we should gift ourselves as a token of appreciation for all our hard work. So the way you gift yourself when you work in these areas is try to change the triggers, try to change the environment so you won't have these unnecessary, can be avoided stresses. Some stresses you can't get rid of, but some you can, and it's worth working on. So before we continue, just did anyone work over this week with any of these 4 ideas and saw a change? Anyone have anything they'd like to share? Okay, so we're gonna go right into it with the 5th point. And the 5th point is something that I definitely touched on last week. And I'm sure I've mentioned it many times in the past because it's something that really is so practical, comes up all the time in our world. And I call it the mask and the man. So I'm going to tell you a story, a fable, a made-up story to express my point. And in the story, you have a total made-up story, as we say, fable, Baba Misa. You have this very ugly man that comes to town and he sees a very, very beautiful woman. And he's like, that's the woman. That's the one. I'm sure she was beautiful on the inside as well as the outside. And, however you want to window dress the story, it doesn't really make a difference. But he says, that's the woman. But she's never going to want me. So what should I do? So he went to the town mask maker. And he said, can you make me a mask of the most beautiful man, the most handsome man, the most gentle man, the most refined man? And he did. And he put the mask on and mask firmly in place. He courted the woman. They got married. They lived together happily for many, 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 many years. All the time, his mask is very firmly on his face. And after years and years and years, suddenly the enemy of this very ugly man comes to town. And he sees him and he recognizes him under his mask. And he says, what is going on? Here he has this beautiful life and this beautiful wife, and he's so esteemed by everyone. It's all fake. It's all garbage. I know what he really looks like. And this tremendous dramatic movement in front of all the people of the town, and asked me how, but he had them all there. He rips off the mask and exposes the face of the man. But what happened? What did they see? What they saw was, after years and years and years of wearing this mask, the face of the mask was the face of the man. And I guess they lived happily ever after. I really like that story. I'm sure I've said it in the past because it so expresses this enormous ability we have to change, to free ourselves, to become whatever we want. We can literally mold and create ourselves by wearing the mask of goodness, of kindness, of patience. Patience is hard for me. Of tolerance, of respect, of love. Whatever mask we want to put on, we can put on. And as we wear that mask very firmly, very closely, and we keep wearing the mask, the face of the man and the face of the mask become one. It's not, as we say above a mice, it's not a story, it's not a fable. It is actually real life. And we have stories of the tzaddikim that affirm to this. There was an incident with the Tzemach Tzedek, the third Lubavitcher Rebbe, where a man came to him and complained and said, I'm not happy. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, act happy. And the man said, but what does that help? I want to be happy. And the Tzemach Tzedek said, when you act happy, the happiness will come. I don't know if any of you have ever tried that trick. I have. It works very, very, very well. When you act it, when you act as if you're happy, even if inside you're sort of feeling not, but you keep that mask on and you keep acting happy, it changes you. Your inner world changes and you start feeling more happy. As I think I might have quoted last week, this goes back to a very foundational sefer called Sefer HaChinuch. And the Sefer HaChinuch writes in there, Acharei hama'asim nimshachim halavavot, which means our actions create our inner reality. That is a very profound, practical statement. Our actions create our inner reality. So sometimes it's hard to, like I'm saying, translate that into the vernacular. But if you think about it and say, well, what do I want to change? These are the days of Omer. These are the days where I have a lot of, officially, potential to grow, potential to change, potential to improve myself. I probably know my weaknesses. What do I need to do that would be the actions of a very different person? And those are the actions you want to do. Sometimes it helps to think of someone like a super patient person or a super kind person or a super generous person and like act like she acts, like she becomes your mask. She becomes that vision of how you are going to change, and just keep like modeling yourself as per your understanding of her. And for some people that works really, really well. And for some people that doesn't work at all. And they just does not work. They do not do that. Sometimes, honestly, you can envision it like, how would I act if someone I really cared about them, I really cared about their opinion, was watching me in this area? I mean, again, don't try to transform yourself until the holiest tzaddik, the greatest, most righteous person of the generation. But in the specific area you're working on, anger management, patience, tolerance, love, paying attention to your kids, respecting your husband, in that one area, choose one. How would I act if someone that I really cared about their opinion was watching me? Sometimes that is, might sound like petty, but actually it's practical. It works. And if you keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it, and this is the point of Sefer HaChinuch, it becomes you. So even if it starts out as artificial as that, it becomes you. Just keep doing it enough. You can imagine your grandmother's watching you. You can imagine your father's watching you. You can imagine your spiritual mentor, your mashpia is watching you, or your principal, or a beloved teacher. Yesterday, I think was Teacher Appreciation Day. You can think of some teacher you really cared about and admired, and she's watching you. I mean, let's face it. All of us act better when other people are around. Is that a not nice secret? It's our reality, so we should use it. Actually, what a very great Tana said this to his students. You should fear God like you fear man. And they're like, what? That's your blessing? That's the spiritual heights we're supposed to aspire to? And he said, when man's watching, you don't sin. So this is a basic part of human nature. So since it's your nature anyway, it's good to use it to help you grow. So that sounds so simple. Why is it hard? It's hard because you have to remember. That's the hard part. The hard part is to remember that you want to change. The hard part is to remember that, I can't say that I didn't count yet tonight, but yesterday was, So we still have quite a number of weeks of Omer left, and I want to maximize them. I want to have this vision of myself as different. I'd like to liberate myself. I mean, I'm in my 50s. I would like to be different than I've been for the past 50 years. I would desperately like to change. I need to. But I have to remember, because if I've acted the same way for 30 years or 40 years or 50 years, it's my most natural space to be in. It might not be a happy space. It might not be a good space, but it's definitely my comfort zone. Maybe my happy comfort zone, but it's definitely my comfort zone. It's definitely natural. So the hardest part, as I've seen, of this whole process is to remember and force yourself to do what you're committing to do. To remember that you want to respond differently. To remember that mask and to keep it on. And then truly, as a story, as the concept from the Tzemach Tzedek, as the quote from Sefer Chinuch that I just said several times, the mask becomes the man. And you will be tolerant. You will be patient. You will be compassionate. It will actually become you. So I'm identifying here that I think one of the hardest things to do here is to remember the work that you're committing to do, even in trigger situations. So does anyone have any tips, what they've seen work for themselves? How do they remember and keep working on their own change? Last week was really great. So many people responded, gave us so many great ideas. That's what I thought really helped us a lot last week. Anyone have any idea? Maybe it's a hard question. Any tips you've ever seen worked for you?
I don't know if I have tips, but I find that the more I work on something, the more I'm being tested. It's like very obvious.
I agree with you. I find the same thing myself. It's very obvious. Sometimes God is supremely obvious. You're working on it, you get tested. You're working on it, you get tested.
So I
Maybe,
almost like don't need those reminders because he gives it to me so clearly. It's so obvious. Like someone who's annoying me, I'd be like, why would you do it? You never do that. And obviously I'm working on myself now, so of course you're gonna do it. So to me, it's very clear when he just puts that right in my face.
I see what you're saying. So since you're tested, that test is a reminder of what you're supposed to do. So that is your reminder, the test.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. I mean, I never connected the two, but yes, I definitely have seen that when I'm working on something, I get challenged in it. Definitely. I totally agree with you on that one. Dina?
So I think that this really resonates with me, the mask becoming the man. I think that when I've worked on things in the past, I something I found helpful that I should have done more is that in the morning be planful of when situations might come up, and then be very mindful, have a mental alarm in my head to be super on my game in those particular situations. Like if I was expecting a phone call from someone or meeting a certain type of person or something like that, just to be planful of when those things could arise.
That's a great idea. I never thought of that. I like that. Especially, I mean, I plan my day every day. So you're just planning your work within your day. Or I think that what Dina's saying is look for the triggers that you know about that probably are going to happen. And then in those moments, remind yourself, a very simple example, I would say taking what Dina's saying. Let's say you're working on, again, anything to do with your children, love, respect, attention, patience, tolerance, focus, anger management. Well, you're going to get invaded at 4:20, let's say. That's when they walk through the door. And they're all going to be nuts and they've all been in school all day and they probably all had hard days and you maybe had stuff going on in your life as well. And they're going to all bombard you at once. So put an alarm on your phone at 4:10 to have 10 minutes of me time, if that's possible. Say Tehillim, have a coffee, breathe, sit, focus on that mask and what it's going to look like, or at 4:15. And then when they walk in, you're prepared. You're going to get pulled. You're going to get triggered, but you prepared yourself. I think that's a great idea. Very practical. Anyone else? Any other way of how they remember the work they're trying to do? Okay, so what Shira said is valid. What Dina said I thought was great. I think it would be nice, if you'd like, to try to think now of a situation where you usually fail, or a recent example where you blow it, and take the energy of the class, because it's good. We have a minion of I don't know, non-kosher witnesses, but soul-wise it counts. So it helps. So all of our spiritual energy is a wonderful thing. If you're talking to someone else, this is how it works in the spiritual world. Your soul and their soul like partner, but your animal energy and their animal energy are completely egocentric. So all of our negative energy has no desire but to mess you up. My animal energy isn't worried about anyone but me. Your animal is only worried about you. So our animal energies never join and huddle and create and have mass energy to give us problems, but our souls always converge to help. So therefore, we got a lot of soul power here that's converging and that's helping. So it's a great time to remember a time when you messed up, as Shira's saying, and I 100% agree with her. I've seen it countless times in my life. Whenever you're working on something, that's when you're usually challenged, and that might mean that's when you mess up. Or it just might be something you've been struggling with for the past 40 years, so you know very well and can think of many examples that you've messed up. Think of something like that. And it'd be nice taking the energy of the class, taking the energy of Rabbi Wallerstein that we're pulling in, to commit to yourself that next time you are going to pass. And when you're in that situation, you're going to think of the class. You're going to remember how empowered you are, how empowered your soul is on its own. We all, no matter how you view yourself, I have no clue, super powerful souls. All of our souls have been here many times. We're really ancient souls, which means very powerful. So you're very powerful on your own. And you also have now all of us, all of our souls are rooting for you. All of our souls are together helping each one of us. So really to take that energy and to commit, I'm going to be aware and I'm going to pass. I'm going to keep my mask on. And you're going to do it. Your acting will be superb. So I'm thinking of a situation that I want to change. And I am going to take the energy of this class and the energy I'm taking from committing now to it now in the class, and I know it's going to help me. If anyone else would like to as well, they can also raise their virtual hand.
I already took something from Pesach, so I'm gonna stick to that one.
That's great. Take that. I'm also doing what I took for Pesach.
If you're doing another one, I'm not.
No, I'm taking my Pesach, my Pesach work. I'm still working on it. I didn't get out of my Egypt because God showed me enough times that I wasn't done yet. But I'm going to take the energy of the class and the commitment from all of our souls to know that next time, it will probably happen very soon, I'm going to be a little freer. It's going to happen. Anyone else want to join me and Chaya? Let's try to commit and envision. Our vision is very powerful. Really envision whatever your personal situation is, doing it right, doing it differently, doing it like so-and-so, doing it as if so-and-so was watching you, doing it like that beautiful mask you're fashioning. Okay. Okay. And I hope for all of us, those that raised the hands, for those that didn't, I hope for all of us, we should really feel that we have more power. So that was one point. Another strategy, another idea that really helps when you're trying to work on yourself is, I'm going to call it taking the long view, having a broad perspective when I'm making decisions. Meaning, what I'd like to do, what we're trying to do, whatever tool we use, what I'm trying to do is refashion myself. That's what I'm really trying to do. So like, again, take this example with patience. Part of being a patient person is not only not losing it with an annoying person, but it's also being patient on the inside for real. So it's being patient in terms of my life, being patient in terms of the developments. So when I take the time to think about the long-term impact of my decisions, asking how is this going to play out in a year from now? How is it going to play out in 5 years from now? It's actually training me to be patient, not just in response to frustrations, but as a general way of life. In life, sometimes we don't have the patience with boring, non-desired jobs, frustrations. We often look for ways to distract ourselves. I don't know if you've ever noticed, I've noticed with myself, I'm doing something I'm not really interested in doing and don't really want to do. And then suddenly, like every few minutes, I'm like looking at my phone and I'm seeing if anything happened. Obviously nothing happened in the past 3 minutes, but I check it again. Why am I doing that? I'm trying to distract myself. I'm trying to escape the situation. I'm trying to escape whatever I'm working on. So when you're looking at yourself in whatever your work is, because of course, for every one of us here, we probably each have something different we're looking at, but look at it in terms of not just, this is how I respond to this trigger. So I want to work on myself in the trigger moment, which is very good. And that's what Dina was saying. And I definitely believe in that. But I'm saying, if you want to go deeper in it, think of it more like long-term. How do I, on the inside, act differently? Because a person like this acts differently also on the inside. Like that's why I was giving the example with patience, because it's a very easy example to see. It's not only, well, I don't want to be impatient when my child is talking to me. I mean, that's true too, and that's very important. But on the inside, a truly patient person has a different perspective on life. So let's say I was working on being more modest, being more humble. So it's not just the trigger when someone says something and I shouldn't respond in an arrogant way. It's also on the inside, how a modest, humble person would think about life and would plan and view their life. And I want to look at it from that way as well. So I want to do surface work. Surface work is very important, especially in this, but I also want to try to do some deeper work. And that also is going to help me shift. Another idea, sort of expanding that a little bit, is trying to take your inner, again, these things are a little more subtle, so I have to explain a little bit more clearly, but to apply your inner character change, whatever it is, to the goals that you're working on anyway, in a way that you're giving yourself the message of self-control. An underlying component of all change is envisioning and understanding yourself as a person that has real inner control. Now, you could say, well, what does self-control have to do with whatever, fill in the blanks? Having, not losing it with my kids. Well, it has a lot to do with not losing it with your kids. Or being gracious to my mother-in-law. It has a lot to do with being gracious to your mother-in-law, or anything else. Whatever you are looking at, again, if you have an idea, you can't see the connection, you want to chat me privately, I can answer publicly. You can always send up a chat just to me and then I can answer it to everyone. So if you're thinking of something and you don't see the connection to self-control, feel free to ask. But I can't think of anything. I can't think of any change we want to make that doesn't have as a critical component self-control. Because there's a lot of self-control, there's a lot of self-discipline required to make these changes. Shira started us off, I think most people are in the beginning, Shira started us off talking about Rabbi Wallerstein and the things she saw that he did, being there for everyone, and if he could or couldn't help, figuring it out and helping. That takes a lot of self-commitment, a lot of self-control, a lot of discipline. You say, no, he was just like a really nice guy and he really cared about people and he had a lot of good connections and he knew how to make things happen. It takes a lot of self-control. It takes a lot of discipline. It takes a lot of vision of yourself as a person that's selflessly there for everyone else. And only then can you behave that way consistently. Okay, so someone did send me up a chat, so I want to read it to be able to respond. Just 1 second. So if we're working, okay, so someone did ask in terms of patience, that sometimes it's really hard to have patience if you're just so exhausted. Like, for example, you're trying to have patience with your children and they refuse to go to sleep and they keep coming out of their beds and it's the end of the day and you're done. How in the world do you have patience then? It's a great question. So I would say, I mentioned before, it's very interesting, true confessions about myself. When I was engaged to my husband knew someone who had an unbelievable skill in handwriting analysis, not trained, just native. A lot of crazy stories of what he had done in the past with his abilities. So my husband, with my permission, showed him my handwriting and we were already engaged. I figured it was safe. And he said maybe like, I don't know, I don't remember, 10, 12, 15 points based on my handwriting, all of which were true. And one of the things he said was impatient. And another one he said is healthy but impatient. So I think he viewed that as almost like an illness. And I was like, oh, wow, I didn't realize it was that bad. And then, of course, I got married and Baruch Hashem had children and Baruch Hashem work in education. And for your students and for your children, you need a lot of patience. And I really, really worked on using exactly these techniques that I was talking about. Very strongly, the mask and the man, very strongly acting as if. And I really saw that it changed, really saw. Unbelievable. It's the most liberating thing in the world to see that you can change and that you can change you. It's like such a freedom because so many of us, how we are, it's not just that the rest of the world says, oh, she's this or she's like that, but we also say that about ourselves. And we also think of ourselves as like, well, I always lose my temper with my husband or am shy in new social situations or always spend more money than we have and get in trouble. And there's that sense of like, guess what? I can change. I don't have to be stuck like that. And then when you work on yourself, which is hard, and you change, there's nothing that feels better. So all that background is to answer this question that, and I'm going to use what Dina said because what Dina said here is very applicable. If you know, and this is I'm asking a very specific question, but I think it's applicable to many people in different situations. If you know you lose it with your kids, you know you don't have patience for them, you know they try, you know they come out of the room with every excuse in the book. I mean, that probably sounds like most of our kids, right? And you know you're exhausted. So you have to plan to give yourself that space, to give yourself the motivation, to know what works for you, and then just to endure it with that mask on of patience. Does that mean like 20 minutes before bedtime having, somehow creating time, giving them something to do that will occupy them and just like really whatever you need to do to nurture yourself, everyone has something different that they do to nurture themselves. Just a little quiet time, being outside. And today was gorgeous weather in Chicago. Breathing deeply. I believe deep breathing is a wonderful thing for everyone. Asking your husband, if possible, to watch them for a few minutes just so you could psych yourself up. At least you can't do it at night, but I will give this tip for the morning because it actually works. I started this, I don't know when. My son is very difficult in the morning. He's special needs and very difficult. And I always feel however much time I give in the morning, it's never enough time because there's always so many ways he just makes it so difficult. And what I started doing when I remember is I give stuck up. This might sound funny, but I literally, this isn't my regular morning routine stuck. I give stuck all day long. This is stuck up deliberately. I give and I said, just Hashem, please make this morning work. Hashem, please make this morning work. Hashem, please make this morning smooth. Hashem, please make it that everything happens okay and I get to school on time, stress-free. And I really see it makes a huge difference. Really does. So I'm sharing that tip. It's not part of your own personal character change, but it's pulling on Hashem's help. You don't get stuck at night. So, I mean, nowadays you can get stuck at probably pretty close to their bedtime, probably even up to 8 o'clock at night. You could do it nowadays. Just put a few coins in and have some me time and have some deep breathing time. And if you need it, really envision what I said before, because I really do see this helps a lot of people. The joy you're going to feel that you mastered yourself. You're just envisioning, I bore the discomfort. I wore the mask. I was patient and I did not lose it. Envision the whole thing. I did not lose it. I was so patient, and the celebration I have afterwards. Maybe I'll do something like eat chocolate to celebrate. These might sound like very small little things that can't really work, but they actually really do. They actually really do. And what really helps is consistency. Keep doing it. You will have plenty of challenges because you put the kids to bed every night. So night after night, keep doing it, and the kids are going to change, and you're going to change. It will work. Dina, did you have a question or comment on that one?
I just wanted to comment. I really like the practical ways of doing this. I think last year I was working on a specific mida, and something that someone told me that I found really helpful with this is she said to not set myself up for failure. And there was a specific person in my family who was very triggering at the time, and she said only do a hair above what your limit is, a hair below what your limit is, and just keep improving on it. So start with a 45-minute coffee date, or a 10-minute phone call, or below a little bit, and that way I'm not going to fail and then feel bad that I messed it up. And that was something that was really helpful.
That's a great idea, and we can apply it definitely here. So if a person would say, if you need to do that, yourself, that's a great tip to say, all right, how many times am I going to demand for myself to patiently get them back into bed? And I at least want to see that I can do it the first 3 times they come out and want water. And okay, that's much better than I was for the past 10 years. And maybe in a few weeks, I'll be able to do it the entire hour until they just give in and fall asleep. So I like that. That's very good. It's very good because we want to feel successful. Very important to envision the success. Very important to feel successful, because then we keep motivated and we keep working. And if we do feel like I'm a failure, and what Shira said is true, it's not just Shira, it's not just me. This is part of the system. When you're working on something, you get tested. And if you get tested and fail, then your evil inclination says, you're such a washout. Don't bother trying. It's don't bother dieting. You're never going to lose weight. Don't bother changing your mida. You can't do that. You got to be much stronger, much more secure, much better person than you are to do that. So we definitely want to avoid those evil inclination, eats the heart traps. But getting back to what I was saying is giving yourself this message, constantly rewiring your vision of self as a person of self-control. And what you need to do is exploit opportunities and keep giving the same messages in these opportunities that you're doing anyway. Like, for example, you say, I'm not eating the cookie. I am choosing to be in control. I am choosing my long-term goal of better health, of better fitness, of less sugar and refined flour in my system over the short-term pleasure of that cookie. I am a person of self-control. I have the ability to go for the long-term benefit instead of the short-term pleasure. Why are you doing that? And that's a lot to say, just to not eat a cookie. Because what you want to do is keep affirming this in your brain. That's sort of a slightly different angle of what Dina was just saying. You want to keep shifting how you think about yourself. In other words, you could just say, I don't want to be fat. I'm not eating the cookie. Okay, great. You didn't eat the cookie. But we just lost an opportunity to change the wiring of your brain. And we want to take all those opportunities and give yourself the same message. I am a person of self-control, and that's why I'm not eating the cookie. I am rewiring how I look at myself. I'm rewiring how I look at my decisions. Our brains, the more we think something, the more we think something. And the faster we think something, and the stronger we think something. So the more we give ourselves the message, over 20, 30, 40 years, I can't control myself. Anyone here ever tell themselves, I can't control myself? If you do, every time you tell that to yourself, you're making it more impossible to control yourself. Or one of my favorite horrible lines that I sometimes find myself slipping in and really don't let, I can't handle this. Does it ever pop into your brain? I can't handle this. Every time you think or say, I can't handle this, you more can't handle it. Because your brain is being fashioned in that way of like, I can't control myself. I can't handle this. I'm losing it. I can't. I'm being triggered. I don't know how to stop myself. All of those messages, each time you think them more and more and more because they're wiring you in a certain way. So if that's how we work, we have to take advantage of it and use it for the good. And that's why, as I'm saying, I'm giving this very overarching message of self-control, because that's the bottom line of any change we're going to make in our lives. And you want to keep utilizing any opportunity you can to say, I have self-control. I'm doing this because I have self-control. I'm making this choice because I have self-control. You're going to make the choice anyway, but it's okay. Still think it. I'm acting this way because I have self-control. I have self-control, and that's why I'm not letting this bother me. I have self-control, and therefore I'm going to ignore this trigger. You're like changing the way you look at yourself on the inside, in your brain. And the more you do that, the more natural it is to make a choice of self-control.
Can I say something?
Sure.
So I work at nursing homes, and a lot of times people bring food in, and I'll look and see if it's something store-bought, whatever, if it has a hechsher. But if it's something that doesn't, sometimes some of this food looks really good. I look at it, and I've said to coworkers too, I'm like, it's so funny, like if this was kosher, I'd have to have some, but it's not. And yeah, it looks good. And yeah, I wish I could have it, but it doesn't, it's not like a taiva, not a deep taiva, like, okay, I can't have it. And that's it. And of course I have the self-control. Or let's say it's something that is milchik and I'm fleishik again, like, oh, it's kosher. Whatever. Too bad I can't have it. But again, it's not anything that, you just have self-control. It's just a non-issue. But if something is kosher and let's say it's fattening or whatever, like someone, like they brought Dunkin' Donuts in once and one of the nursing homes, and, kosher Dunkin' Donuts. And I couldn't stop myself. I had to have two. Like I couldn't, it's interesting.
Interesting.
So true.
Yeah.
I've noticed that as well. So interesting.
I will make myself fleishik, so I will not have any chocolate at night when I'm exhausted. And it really works. There's no time after that, because there's
Don't
Right.
buy the Trader Joe's chocolate chips.
no, don't tell me that.
Don't buy them. That's what I'm eating right now.
Okay.
Oh,
Just turn on your camera, then you won't eat them in front of us, so you'll be fine.
That's funny.
Chavi, I've thought of that so many times. And I almost like it's a wonder to me. And it's not just in terms of like controlling your food, it's in terms of everything. In terms of Judaism, we all have so much control built into our psyche.
Yeah.
I'm not saying as versus eating the food that's as versus any of the things we said tonight, as versus losing it with your kids, as versus anger, as versus anything. We don't have control, but we have control all day long. We control ourselves when we make a bracha before we eat. We control ourselves when we make a bracha after we eat. We control ourselves when we only, again, milchiks, fleischiks. We control ourselves in terms of so much all day long. And yet, when it's out of that realm or semi out of that realm, because obviously all these bad traits are not really out of that realm, like we that iron self-control, like it doesn't transfer. So I like Shira's idea. You have something in the house you don't want to eat, just make yourself the other gender. But I really wonder, and I've thought this actually many times, how do I take that control that I use all day long for certain parts of religion and apply it to everything else? If anyone has any answers to that, I'd love it, because I've thought of what Chavi said many times. I do see a chat here that I missed. Let me look at what Linda just wrote. So Linda, I don't know the background, so I'm going to answer not knowing anything. I guess my first question that I would ask, if you want to answer in the chat or not, is this your first year teaching, or have you been doing this for many years? If it's your first year teaching, my experience, my first year teaching was like so difficult, so difficult. And then it was really weird. Like first day of second year, clicked in. I was a teacher. I have been for many years since. But I think that first year, but I don't know if it's your first year. So I'm asking that question, not knowing. If it's your first year, I would tell myself that the entire year. It is so, it's like many things in this world. Many things are very, 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 very challenging, but nobody really appreciates them or views them as such. And therefore we don't get accolades when we do it right. And teaching is one of those things. Being a mother is another one of those things. Being a mother and a teacher is like a double dose. And so everyone just says, oh, like you go in a room and you teach, or, oh, you have kids, so you're a mother. It doesn't really work that way. And that might be why a mother, you got no choice. But as a teacher, there's a lot of people that do it and struggle and do it and struggle and do it and struggle and keep wondering, what's my problem? And the truth is, it's very difficult. There's a lot of skills that one needs to really be a teacher. So if it's the first year you're teaching, but I don't know if it is or not, or in the beginning of your career, wait, many years, but I'm always too easy with the kids. They see me on their side. Okay, fine. All right. So skip the first year issue, but you're saying it's the opposite. You've been doing this for many years. So therefore, you've ingrained in yourself the wrong patterns. Okay. For anyone out there who's in the beginning of it, in any of these types of things, I think marriage is the same. I think being a mother is the same. These are really incredibly difficult things, but we just sort of assume everyone does them, and therefore you just sort of do them, and therefore they're supposed to work. And then when they don't, we think we have a problem. And the truth is, they're difficult things. So if you have a mentor, I'm hoping the mentor is telling you what to do differently, and I'm hoping that she's giving you the right guidance. So if she's, whatever the mentor's telling you, let's just say, again, I don't know, because I don't know the specifics here, but I would think that what you need to tell yourself is, again, I'm basing it on what you wrote in your second chat. I'm always too easy with the kids. They see me as on their side. So I would think, if that was my problem, what I need to change in my inner wiring is the sense that the best thing for the children is for me to be more firm. Because a lot of times when we're easy and nice, we're thinking in our heads, I want to be nice to the kids. I love the kids. I just want to, mommy them or give them love. And then whoa, it didn't work out. And what we saw, again, I don't know if this is your situation. If I'm not going the right direction, you can let me know. But a lot of times, and by the way, the same thing's true for mothers. The best thing for my child, the best thing for my students is for me to create a more disciplined environment now. The best thing for my child, for my student, is structure. And I have to stick to the discipline to create the structure. The healthiest thing for these children is when there's order in the classroom. the best thing for the children is order. Because a lot of times we don't do these things because we feel uncomfortable and we feel it's almost like, oh, I'm doing this for myself and I don't want to, that's wrong. No, actually, this is the best thing for the kids. So sometimes those messages, and again, you could give them yourself a lot of different ways, but when you convince yourself again and again and again, I love the children and therefore I'm being firm. I love the children and therefore I'm maintaining discipline. I care about the children and therefore I'm not giving into what this child wants because I really care about her. I really care about her and therefore I'm not letting her have this. Just like with our own children, it's sometimes so much easier to give in, but sometimes we have to bear the discomfort of not giving in because that's the best thing for the child. So obviously in a classroom with a lot of kids, it's multiplied, but it's the same approach. If I really put the kids first, I'm going to do this. I put the kids first, I'm going to do this. Those would be the types of messages I would tell myself to try to shift in this area. Anyone else has any better ideas, please feel free to add.
No, from what you're saying though, this David's Zadie always said like, when the babies were crying, he would say they're crying for discipline. That's all they want. And it made it easier for me to like have my kids screaming in the crib at night when we're sleep training them, or when they're all just crying for who knows what. I just keep telling myself they're crying for discipline. This is what they're asking for.
That's a great line. That's a great line. And I agree. And I think that also sometimes, I mean, not recently with my children, but when my children were younger, I definitely had some kids that tested me in some areas. And it was really like, I love my child. And that's why I'm completely ignoring him right now. I love my child. And therefore I'm not giving in. And I'm completely ignoring him because that's the only way to not give it. And it worked for some of the kids, some of the times. Okay. It's late. I don't want to go over time. Okay, so it's late. I don't want to go over time. So we are going to stop at this point. If anyone is new to the class and would like the class's contact information on a regular basis, Shira, maybe you could put up your number in the chat so then they could connect with you and you can connect them with the class. And
wait, can you do a quick Parsha thing really fast?
Sure, very fast because it's late. Let's think. This was not on the plan. Let's see. This week is Kedoshim. Achrimos we have for 3 weeks in a row, in case anyone noticed, because of course only last week could we read it in Shabbos, and this week is Kedoshim. The beginning of the parsha speaks about Kedoshim Tihiyu, being holy, and then there's a lot of laws like, and then speaks about honoring your parents, and then speaks about keeping the Shabbos. What's the connection of those three things? Be holy, honor parents, Shabbos. So basically, this parsha, by the way, is considered one of the most significant parshios. We're told, Rashi actually says in the first Rashi, that the entire Jewish people were there when Moshe said this, teaching to them this parsha. And the question that the commentators and Rashi ask is, isn't that true for all of Torah? I mean, like once Moshe started teaching the Jews, didn't he spend 40 years teaching all of them everything? And the answer is, yeah, but sometimes people didn't show up. Maybe you had a headache that day. Maybe you couldn't make it to the class. Okay, it happens. I mean, 40 years, it happens. But for this parsha of Kedoshim, Moshe said, everyone's coming. I'm like, so to speak, taking attendance. 3 million of you. Why? Because the most major principles of Torah are in this parsha, such as honoring your parents, such as keeping the Shabbos. Other commentators say because the 10 commandments are basically, in other words, taught throughout this parsha. So the fundamentals of Judaism are in this parsha, and it's pretty short parsha, so you could read it yourself. So the parsha begins, be holy, honor your parents, keep the Shabbos. What's the connection of those three things? So we're starting off by saying this is fundamental of Judaism 101. I want every single Jew there, be holy. Recognize we're not like the rest of the world. What does holy mean? Holy means separate. Be separate. Don't be like the 8 billion out there. You're a Jew, you're different, you're godly. Okay, so how do I achieve that? So therefore we have the second commandment, honor your parents. Meaning, you want to be holy? You need a very strong connection to your parents. Parents, it's your responsibility to take your children and make them godly, holy people. And it's very interesting because the verse puts the mother before the father, if you look in the parsha. In the Ten Commandments, it says, honor your father and mother. But in Kedoshim, it says, revere your mother and father for various reasons. But from this perspective, it's because bottom line, the one that's going to really impact that child is the mother. However much we'd like sometimes the father to participate, but God knows he put us first. Because if we want our children to be holy, if we want our children to be separate, if we want our children not to feel like every other person on the street nowadays feels and acts and behaves, it's in our hands. It's in our hands to do it, or it's in our hands to abnegate our responsibility. And lo and behold, it's not going to happen. So that's why holy parents. And then the third point is, I keep the Shabbos. Because Shabbos means however much we do, we need help from above. However much you're going to pour into your children, you need something a little bigger than you sometimes. So keep the Shabbos. Shabbos is the sign of God's relationship to us. A non-Jew is not allowed to keep Shabbos. Shabbos means we have a special relationship. We're different than the rest of the world. So we want our children to be separate. We want our children not to be like the, flow, if you that you don't want to watch and see what's happening on YouTube and on this and on that. And you want the kid to be holy. You want them to be separate. It's in the parents' hands. It's specifically in the mother's hands. And keep the Shabbos and keep turning to God as that silent partner in the relationship, as that silent partner in raising your children, to pull in his energy as well, to make your children Kedoshim. That was a little thought from the Parsha. Shir put me on the spot, but that's okay because I put her on the spot in the beginning of the class, so that was very fair. And again, if anyone wants, then they know Shira and they could connect to her to get the information for the class on a weekly basis. And thank you so much for attending. And I sincerely hope that everything we said tonight should be Le'ilei Nishmas, should help. As everything we do, we know what we see is only a very, very thin surface on what really goes on. And everything else that we can't see is really far, far more happening and far more intense. So what we do should be Le'ilei Nishmas, and anything you take from the class should also be Le'ilei Nishmas. Thank you so, so much for joining. We should have a wonderful, empowering week, and we should make this real, make this practical. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Such an amazing class.
Thank you.